Okay, guys, this is lesson 3 in chapter 11. So, yes, chapter 11, lesson 3. I think that's what it is. Yes, chapter 11, lesson 3. Yes. And the lesson is right here. Test for parallelograms. It's right there. What does that mean? You have been given a shape. They tell you to check if it is a parallelogram. That's what this means. I have a shape. I have a polygon or a shape. I have a shape and I need to make sure it is a parallelogram. Parallelogram. That's what I'm doing in this lesson. I'll be given a shape. They'll tell me, determine if this shape is a parallelogram. For a shape to be parallelogram, it must be a quadrilateral. That means it must have 4 sides. If it doesn't have 4 sides, don't bother with it. It is not a parallelogram. So, for you to be a parallelogram, you must be a quadrilateral. And your opposite sides must be parallel. That's the first test. Opposite parallel, and you have 4 sides. Okay? Now, we did this today in class. So, quadrilaterals that are parallelograms, quadrilaterals that are not parallelograms. You need to know all of them. Parallelogram, squares, rectangle, rhombus. And then here, kite, trapezoid. And you need to know the reason. Their opposite sides are not parallel. Their opposite sides are parallel. Even though they have 4 sides, they are not parallelogram because the opposite sides are not parallel. Okay? Now, but this is not enough. You need to do more. So you have seen opposite side are parallel, and you have seen it has 4 sides. You don't stop there. You have to continue. So that's why I wrote here, this is not enough to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. You must do more proofs. Okay? Now, one of the proofs you must make sure the opposite sides must be congruent. If they are not congruent, then they are not parallelograms. Okay? Both pairs must be congruent. These two and these two. You cannot just have this one and then this one are not congruent. So if I write 6 here, and then I write 6 here, and then I write 5 here, and then 3, this is not a parallelogram. Because 5 and 3 are not the same. This must be the same, and this must be the same. So you should have 2 pairs of the same number. Okay? So DE and GF is one pair. DG and EF is another pair. So, because this pair is congruent and this pair is congruent, this parallelogram DEFG is, this shape, this quadrilateral is a parallelogram because these opposite sides are congruent. Okay? Or you check with the angles. Maybe the question did not give you the sides, it gave you the angles. So you have checked your 4 sides. You have checked that the opposite sides are parallel. After you check that, you must check if the opposite angles are equal or congruent. Both pairs must be congruent. So if I write 120 here, I should write 120 here. If I write 50 here, I should write 50 here. I don't even think that's the number. 60. They should be 60 because you want 180. Yes. Now, if this is 60 and this is 70, then that is not a parallelogram. It is a different shape. These two must be equal. These two must be equal. You should have 2 equal pairs. 2 different equal pairs. Okay? So this is my first pair and this is my second pair. And that's what I wrote. Both pairs must be congruent. Angle M is congruent to L. Angle P is congruent to N. So MNLP is a parallelogram because of that. And remember, if I write PMN, I am talking about angle M. This is the angle I am talking about. If I write NLP, I am talking about angle L. You have to remember this. We learned in lesson 2 of chapter 5. We are forgetting. Another important thing, they might not give you these two. They might not give you the sides, and they might not give you the angles. They might just draw the picture like this. So you should know the diagonals must bisect. If you see these two arcs, and I mean these two tick marks, and this one, if the tick marks are the same on the same line, then that means your diagonals are bisecting. And if your diagonals are bisecting, then ABCD is a parallelogram. Okay? So AC is bisecting AE, is bisected by AE and EC, like that. So that means AE, whatever number I write for AE, I will write for EC. If I write here 7, this must be 7. If this is 9, this must be 9. So if you see a picture like that, then this shape is a parallelogram. Okay? Then, if one pair of the opposite sides of a quadrilateral are both parallel and congruent, one pair. So if this is one pair, so if they're both congruent and parallel, then that shape is a parallelogram. Okay? So ABCD is a parallelogram because AB is parallel to DC and AB is congruent to DC. So that is why ABCD is a parallelogram. Now you will be given this one. So here you will use the two triangles. Okay? The question tells you WX is the same as ZY. That means they are congruent. And they tell you WZ is the same as XY. That's why they wrote that sign there. That came from the question. So if you draw this diagonal line, that means this triangle is congruent to that triangle. So line WX forms triangle WXY. And then ZY forms triangle WYZ. Okay? And because these two triangles are equal. Also, we know that WY is the same as YW because of reflexive property of congruence. Remember that. When you have one line from head to toe and toe to head, is the same thing. That is reflexive property of congruence. You must use that here. Okay? So these things you know. So you know that these two triangles are congruent, and you know that WY is the same as YW. So you write here, and angle Z is congruent to X, and angle W is congruent to Y. So remember, we are writing a paragraph proof. There's a lot of things you need to write when you're writing a paragraph proof. So triangle WXY and WYZ must be congruent because of these factors. Because WX forms that triangle and ZY forms that triangle, and YW is the same as WY, and angle Z is the same as angle X, angle Y is the same as angle W. Because of all this, we can say triangle WX is congruent to triangle WZ. And we can also say that WX is parallel to ZW, and WZ is parallel to ZY. So because of all this information we have written, then this quadrilateral WXYZ must be a parallelogram. Must be. So remember, you have to use one of these, opposite sides, this, that, and this one, together with what we did at the beginning. Together with this. So this is step 1. Step 1, you must do this too. Step 3, you must choose from either one of these that we did. Extra. So you must have at least 3 things to show why your shape is a parallelogram. At least 3 things. You can use the triangles, you can use the angles, you can use the congruent sides, you can use the bisectors. Okay? Aleph. See you tomorrow. Make sure you do examples also.